Hey Collective, it's Alan. Welcome back to the channel. Today's video is going to be dedicated towards the need for a call to action for a new leadership built of integrity. And before I launch into this particular subject matter, let me just preface this by saying that I might come across as a cold-hearted bitch in a moment. But I'm going to have to channel my big heartthrob, sexiest man alive, Anderson Cooper here for a minute just to get myself from extending myself and exactly how emotional this subject matter makes me. But let's just begin by saying that the Divine and I were having a wonderful conversation today, the Divine Universe and my guides and I, about morality and specifically what it means to have integrity. And what started all this was that we were discussing, or I was listening to a lecture that I was receiving on the subject matter of what it is like for the Divine Universe to observe humanity daring to gamble with their children at this time and what that does to an underage child that hasn't fully developed yet and hasn't even gone through puberty yet. So as I begin this particular thing, let me just go into the definitions that would need be for this particular segment. So integrity is defined by the quality of being honest and having strong moral principles, or the state of being whole and undivided, basically upholding spiritual sovereignty and integrity. The other part that I wanted to then clear up would be what is moral principles, and that is the principles of right and wrong that are accepted by an individual or a social group. So the reason that I'm bringing this up is because if we look at integrity, it's the quality of being honest and having strong moral principles. So since we understand what those are now, let's discuss what it is like for a divine universe to observe humanity daring to put toxins into an underage person who hasn't gone through puberty yet. And I wanted to kind of ask the question of where exactly is our moral fiber here, collective? How dare we mess with an underage child that we are here to protect? You brought them into the world, and now you are playing a gambling game with their health. You do not know yet what the long-term effects are for a child. So why would you dare gamble with your own children on this one? Just because someone says their color is white doesn't mean it's white. It could be beige. It depends on the eye of the beholder. And so the Divine just wanted me to remind you all that when it comes to children, there is a difference between an adult, someone who has fully formed and doesn't have that problem down the road, to an underage person who hasn't gone through their menstrual cycle yet. That is a completely different ballgame. So since we are deciding to go down this rabbit hole, I just wanted to remind you all that one of the things that I do not care for in this world is any type of child abuse or any type of child trafficking or anything that has to do with crimes against children. And seeing as we don't know what the long-term effects are for adults, the idea of you injecting this into a 12-year-old child or a 13-year-old child or a 14-year-old child reminds me of something that I would call as rape, because they are not of age to yet allow for that. So we're allowing parents to make that decision for them. But these are the same people who, if something happens to those children down the road, would not be able to take accountability for their actions and would blame the government for their inability to handle what they brought into this world. So, as a cold-hearted bitch, let me just remind you this. The Divine doesn't play that game. If we go down this rabbit hole, I'm just supposed to remind you all, as a collective, that we will be judged on it. Understand that though we can gamble with our own lives, gambling with our children's lives is not acceptable. So as we go down into this particular hell that we're about to cross into, let me just remind you all that we are in a state of reset. And what they're asking you to do is a crime against humanity. It is something not allowed in the cosmos. The biggest, precious, most cargo that we have are our children. They are our future. And here you are looking at it as though it's something that you can gamble away. And then wonder why the rest of us are looking at you, wondering why you are even parents. So, as we go into this chapter of our lives, let me just point this out to you. You brought them into the world saying that you would take care of them and protect them. You can't do that if you haven't had time to test it on underage children yet. If you haven't noticed, these little tests and experiments that we keep putting onto our children seems to be getting gun violence at schools and a lot of things that didn't used to exist until we started doing things like this. This is a very dark form of alchemy, isn't it? So be very cautious about how we proceed going forward, collective, because let me just say that the Divine Universe is very much involved now. Specifically, I noticed that while I was talking to the universe that they were speaking about Louisiana being one of the first states to administer it to 12-year-olds on up, and they okayed it. And I just remember thinking, well, that's interesting. I wonder why. And then I realize it's because they would have no way of retaliating. After all, they are innocent. Innocent people do not have rights in this country, as we are noticing. So as we go down into this rabbit hole, I just want you all to be very, very cautious of how you proceed when you inject toxins that are synthetic into a child's body who has not gone through puberty yet. That's it for tonight. Have a great night.